most of the interviews that CEOs give on podcasts are very boring. But you can think of a gym bro who's working in Cult Fit or something like that, generally saying, hey, you know what, this works amazingly for me. Look at me and my six pack.
People are actually losing trust in institutions. They don't believe in corporate messaging anymore.
Going beyond just the talent pool hiring, it's more about that the in-house influencers, as we call them, the employees, they can act as advertisers for the company's offering. I make a reel on Instagram where I'm in the factory and I'm telling the person, like, put 4 almonds, not 3.
Where would you take the budget from? They say people are the new brands, and especially so in a world wherein we are losing faith on even people, especially on LinkedIn, when they're commenting on things, high, wide, and plentiful. And one of the things that we've also understood is that influencers are costing a lot of money. So in this scenario, can employee advocacy actually make a big impact on the way in which a brand is? Because they are the people who are actually fronting your brand, your customer care, your sales, and everybody else. So in this specific episode, what we're trying to do is figure this piece about employee advocacy a little more. So Janvi, why don't you set us the details?
So it's a known fact that social media algorithms largely favor individual profiles more than the company pages. Brand messages shared by employees generate 800% more engagement than those shared by official channels. But it's not just brand awareness metrics that see growth. According to a PwC survey, 69% of investors consider employee value proposition when making investment decisions, referring to how employees perceive a company's value to them. There are numerous examples of companies deploying employees as brand advocates, and not just as social media influencers, but as authentic voices of the company at several online and offline touchpoints that have led to a company's success, directly or indirectly. So with this, let's start a conversation. And for this episode, we have a special guest. Prem Kumar is a veteran business growth consultant with 25 plus years of experience in helping SMEs overcome challenges like stagnating growth, market expansions, and operational inefficiencies. He has worked with companies like Sony, Roca India, Ample Technologies, and more, leading business development operations, product growth, monetization strategies, and so on. So first of all, Prem, welcome to our show at Weber Lab. Secondly, let's open our discussion with a myth buster. While it's widely believed that employee advocacy works very well for hiring better talent and for promoting a company's culture as a PR activity, most companies don't seem to realize that this can be a very effective as well as a fairly untapped marketing resource for achieving their direct business growth. So, in your experience, Prem, how do you see employee advocacy and branding programs being an effective tool for achieving business outcomes?
Okay, first of all, let me lay out the context, the way I'm thinking about this particular subject as to why do we need, so-called employee branding in the first place. Generally, I mean, this applies to even brands as well. People are actually losing trust in institutions, or for that matter, in corporates. They don't believe in, corporate messaging anymore. It seems like more of a massaged thing, and, it's just a PR activity, and they just don't buy that. So, which is why the belief in employees who are working there becomes even more. So that is the core, really. That is one aspect. The second aspect also is, what is the motivation? Like gone are the days where, like we have gone from this roti kapda makan stage when we were kind of growing up, way 25, 30 years back, to a stage where, people want more meaning from their jobs. It is no more that, it is about perks or, canteen or this and that. People want more meaning out of their jobs. So these kind of communications, so even the motivation, ultimately branding is all about what is the motivation that you are, reaching out to, even otherwise as a product marketer. So here the motivation also is to, give them a sense of ownership or belonging, or, giving them meaning. In fact, this, whatever I'm going to say now, it goes beyond employee advocacy also, which is to do with culture. At the root of this, the foundation, it is like a foundation of a building. There is no point talking about, this employee advocacy, branding, company branding, whatever you want to call it, till your internal culture, which is the foundation, according to me, is very solid. Nothing what you do external will matter. People will see through that. So I think that is the core. And what I mean, what do I mean by culture? I mean, you need to kind of codify this culture in your mission statement. And what do I mean by that? Which means a lot of companies today don't even have a mission statement, by the way. Or even if they do have, they don't walk the talk. So I think you need to have codify the mission statement. Like, for example, let's say I was just going through some of these, like Patagonia, saying that we are in the business of preserving this environment. Apparently, it was very fascinating as part of this when I was going through. They even allow their employees to go and participate in protest for environmental causes. That is like walking the talk. I mean, unless and until you have these kind of cultural values codified into your DNA, that, according to me, is fundamental. Means which only then can you actually communicate the cultural values or the work environment, whatever you want to communicate to employees. Because unless you get your house in order, how are your employees going to speak for whatever it? I mean, you might have a great poster, but if your employee says boss, I mean, that is something else going on. So it will never gel. So you need to have that foundation ready first, which is culture, which is.
No,
And
yeah.
sorry.
So it's a very interesting point that you make, because codifying culture is easier said than done. And I think I've seen a lot of mission statements that actually are, are so bland and so weird that you can't literally, they're just word salad. So if I look at the way in which you're codifying culture, and if I look at the intricacies behind that, right, the codification of culture, I suspect that there are some companies who can probably find an easier path to it. Because if I look at, say, a startup, which is a really exciting place to be, then it's quite likely that there's fewer number of employees, the co-founder or the founder are very dynamic and energetic. And so then there is a codification of culture that happens intuitively, right? Or very normatively. But the fact is that the moment you start becoming bigger, you start scaling up, or you start looking at yourself as an FMCG or a D2C or whatever you want to call it, the codification of culture becomes extremely difficult. So that's point number one. Point number two is that there is a financial motivation as well as there is an emotional motivation to it.
Right.
So unless and until you're gamifying the whole thing, will it still stand on its two legs, even though you genuinely believe in the culture of the company? So clearly, if you're Patagonia, you will do it, right?
Mhm.
Because you have a very strong emotional connect. So I'm just wondering, this codification of culture, do you see it as a step zero before you get anywhere else? Can all companies do this, whether or not their culture is strong? How do you see that?
Absolutely, Siddharth. I think, in fact, honestly, we can have a completely different discussion on culture itself. As they say, culture eats strategy for breakfast. There's a famous Peter Drucker said it, I think, if I'm not mistaken, if I'm not misquoting him. So, which is so true. I mean, it doesn't matter, even if it is a 1% company or a 2% company, unless and until there is a story. I mean, when I say this mission, this is also linked to what you keep talking about in your podcast, which is about story. What is the story? What is the purpose? Why should I get up from my bed every morning? When I say why, I'm talking about an employee, and drive and go towards office and put in my best efforts, and I don't even have to be told to work beyond like the famous Murthy statement of 70, or maybe I'll work 120 hours for all I care.
Yeah.
But unless and until I believe in the purpose, I will not be invested in this the whole thing.
Yeah. So before we go into how you can bring out this culture, just so it is a small startup. There are 10 people or 20 people. It is easier to bring out that kind of culture, to get the kind of employees who believe in what you believe. But as you scale up, as you become like 100 or 1,000 employee company, getting the kind of people who also believe in your passion, then are willing to go the extra mile to for your passion, while also have the same kind of capabilities that you are looking for, it becomes extremely difficult. So somewhere as you grow up, at least in the bigger companies, this talent pool gets diluted when it comes to values.
In fact, I would argue that it's a very I don't think it's counterintuitive, but the more you scale, you even you need the culture even more. Because you just can't be with you can't meet everybody for lunch every other day or whatever it is. You might have 10,000 people. Imagine a company like TCS with some 4 lakh or I don't know some 4 lakh employees trying to meet. So it is actually, this is why it is such a core thing, that as you grow, the requirement for culture is even higher. Now, how do you do it? Of course, I mean, there are various ways. I can go into details of that, but I mean, just to illustrate some simple things, like I've seen in many companies, the communication from CEOs to an employee doesn't happen. It just once in a, can you just have a newsletter going to every employee, down to the peon also, perhaps, I mean, if I may say so, as to what the company is doing and where are we, what is our future projections, just a simple newsletter. 99% companies don't have this, by the way. So we're not talking some earth-shattering things and all that. There are a lot of simple things that you can do. You can have town halls, and even if you're a large organization, the local head can, be the local, let's say the, how do you say, he can be the brand ambassador in that local branch or whatever. In fact, the argument is you have to absolutely, live that culture as you grow. It is the other way around. It is a small team. It also वैसे default. I mean, everybody. It's like if 3 of us start a company. I mean, that is understood. That is not at all required. All this you require as you scale up.
Yeah.
In fact, I was just going through as part of this. I mean, slight digression. We can come back to that again. Like, for example, I was going through some Swiggy pages. Now, Swiggy has a very interesting thing where employees are actually talking about various things, various projects that they have done, and they allow them to publish in their own LinkedIn page, and it kind of dovetails into the Swiggy's page also.
Yeah, no, that's good. But I was just wondering, how do we address Janavi's initial question, and how does employee advocacy? Do you see it like, if I have to ask you this question, right?
Sure.
If you're the CEO of of a
Right,
company who's looking
right,
towards employee advocacy, let's
right,
call it a B2B company or
right,
whatever,
right.
and you have to try and allocate some sort of budget for it.
Mhm.
Where would you take the budget from? Will you take it from the marketing guys, or will you take it from the HR guys, or will you take it from the sales guys? Because if you have a culture, then it is probably going to be towards marketing, right? And stuff like that. But if you're trying to build the culture, right, and motivate employees through something like this, then it probably falls squarely into HR land.
See, budget is a very, again, we tend to kind of compartmentalize all this into a marketing budget or a HR budget or sales budget. So if I were a CEO, I mean, I would ask that, boss, it is like if culture as a category is, extremely, it's like on the top of the pyramid or whatever it is, because that is what drives everything. How does it matter? I mean, I can pick from every, I mean, of course, if you're talking more from a cost function, बोलते हैं ना कि we have to report to a finance guy कहाँ से आ रहा है, उसके लिए you can create one, you can shave off from every other thing, but from a logical point of view, it doesn't have to be looked at as a finance, I mean, from marketing से ले लो या HR से ले लो, you have to have a budget, I mean, period. I mean, no two ways about it. Where you get it from, it is, that is an internal financial jugglery rather than anything else. We don't have to look at it like that, is my point.
Yeah.
Yeah, this brings me to the initial mythbuster thing that I was talking about, right? This kind of activity is generally considered as an HR activity to
Right.
attract better talent. So, if you're doing it as a marketing expense, then the direct question comes: why not just hire influencers? They have better reach. They are good at creating content. Why do you need to tap into the employees at all who don't have the kind of who won't get the kind of engagements that an influencer could, or who the investors don't know, the consumers don't trust yet, who are basically just another average person?
Okay, John, is a great question. But before that, again, a slight nuance before I answer that main question. See, when you say companies look at this as HR, that again is a separate. I mean, I have so many thoughts on these. So that again is a huge mistake. I mean, you cannot compartmentalize. Culture is like such a, as I say, like I'm in a building right now, and if there is no foundation, it doesn't matter how many floors you build, what kind of floors you build, a 3-bed BHK, 4 BHK, 2 BHK, a penthouse, it'll fall. So culture is at the root of any company. It's more like a DNA to that extent. So first of all, I think even this mindset of this being an HR function or this thing has to be kind of removed. I mean, if you want yourself to be a great company, or if you want a small company to become great, and you want to attract the best of the best. It's like when Google was growing up. I mean, I still remember during those days, they used to say, even today, I think Google, they actually give budgets and everything to people who want to pursue independent projects. And many times people have gone on to form different companies with Google investing or even spinning it off. I mean, can you imagine that? I mean, that is like amazing. So what would you call that? Would you call that an HR? Of course not. I mean, that would be like
I would call it a CEO's budget, probably.
absolutely. Yeah, that's a brilliant way of putting it. It has to be, in fact, not only budget, the ownership also has to be CEO.
Yeah.
Because CEO का काम ही culture and people है. बाकी सब तो हो रहा है.
Yes.
Everything else is happening. But CEO is actually, that is a brilliant point, that you added here, Siddharth, that it is the CEO who has to take ownership of this culture thing.
Right.
This influencer thing also is absolutely inauthentic. I mean, I don't, which is like I started the whole discussion by saying that, people are not even believing companies. And on top of that, now you're asking them to believe influencers. I mean, that is like a big irony there, right? I mean, I'm not even believing what company is saying. And now you're saying an agent of company and coming and telling me what. So that is like a double negative,
Okay,
So
yeah, I think
that will absolutely not work. People will see through that, and which is why we need to go into the actual. Okay, now the next part we can talk about how do you make the regular employee advocacy happen. Coming to that part now, again here my view is that a lot of companies are doing this already. I see this on LinkedIn. Like the other day, I saw one Pepsi, official thing. They were interviewing the head of marketing at there and what they do, and how did they bring this brand to life, and amazing interview. So a lot of companies, they do this, they are using these employees as something like a testimonial. So which would be one way, definitely.
Sure.
But even there, I find that, there is a degree of scripting, and where there is a degree of company line or whatever. But I think for this to be truly, seen as realistic or authentic, as I call it, I think that Swiggy was a great example. You should allow people to showcase whatever they are doing inside the company. Okay, of course, I think you had asked me sometime back, what are the broad guidelines? The guidelines can be, honestly, sometimes I've seen employees talking about various stories and all that. I don't want storification. So the guidelines can be showcase what you're actually doing. That's it. So if let's say in Swiggy or in Pepsi, I've done a great, okay, let's say Pepsi, I mean, I've done a great brand, or I've done a great activation, or I have cracked this particular distribution channel, let's say a sales manager does it, talk about it. And they should just encourage it. Original, authentic stories, which is adding value to the company. So the idea is the communication when I see that is, look, this is what the real work is, instead of believing in, oh, this is a great company. I have lunch here. I have this here. I have, I can sleep for some 2 hours. I mean, I don't think all that really matters.
So let's kind of put this to the test, right? I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you in principle. But eventually, a CEO, if it's the CEO's budget, has to kind of, the problems that I see with something like this is that the CEO is accountable to the board of directors or
Right.
something like that. And if I'm accountable, then I need to show something tangible, and culture is intangible, right? So, and if I go for authentic stories or organic authentic stories about what I'm doing alone, then I'm not able to say, oh, this is what they did and this is what it resulted in. So I see a fight for a CEO to actually kind of justify whatever she's doing or he's doing in terms of actually getting results. So in this case, it's quite likely that there is some kind of maybe marketing involved without it becoming very corny or absolutely commercial, but there needs to be some kind of measurement, isn't it, in terms of getting the CEO to answer to his board.
Well, see there, I know where you're coming from. There, the metric honestly can be like if I were a CEO of that company, the very fact that, let us say, if I were to show okay, supposing a board is asking me what did you do in the last 1 year as part of this culture initiative, probably I would start with, of course, I'm assuming that my business would have done well because I'm attracting the best of the best. So that goes without, the numbers goes without saying. But even in terms of, I should be able to tie those numbers in with the kind of talent that I have attracted. See, at the end of the day, let's not forget what is company. Company without people is nothing. It's a Kokla thing. I mean, it's like everything is run by, if you get the best, you achieve the best. That's a fact of life. So if you are able to tie in these results with the fact saying that, look, I got this. So, okay, I got this result because I have some of the best talents, and these talent came into the company because of the kind of culture that we're developing. That's it. You just you just form this chain.
So Prem, what I'm seeing, right, from your thinking process and all of that is very, very valid, but it's all internal. So if I'm looking at an external thing, like if I'm trying to create a story which is more believable for the marketplace, there can be an opportunity in a way to create authentic stories that are touching the market. So employees have families, employees have influence, employees have the ability to actually walk the talk, etc. And if I move from, let's say, software companies or B2B companies, which are kind of smaller, and if I look at maybe scaled up companies or D2C companies, then you have the ability for employees to say, yeah, this is an amazing product. You should go for it. And I'll just correlate it to, say, influencers, right? So we don't believe all influencers, but we definitely, if I'm listening to a podcast by, let's say, Tim Ferriss or somebody, and he in his own voice, or an Andrew Huberman, and if he in his own voice is speaking about some product that he's tried out, right, or something like that, then there is a certain realness to the whole thing. I'm wondering whether there can be an external metric, or in your view, it should all be internal for talent management.
No, but when you say, Siddharth, when you say external metric, can you specify what exactly so that I can answer that better?
Yeah, no, sure. So if I look at the way in which employees are able to talk about products, service, brand, or what their latest offering is, or deals and discounts or whatever, without it becoming an MLM scheme, it could potentially have more authenticity, as you said, in the market. So when they're actually communicating to the external world, right? So that is where I'm talking about. So that is the area that I'm talking about.
I think it's beyond just it's going beyond just the talent pool hiring, or telling the investors that, or the stakeholders, that this is the kind of talent that we have, this is the kind of ops that we have. It's more about that the in-house influencers, as we call them, the employees, they can be used to promote your own product, your own offerings of the company. So basically they can act as advertisers for the company's offerings.
Yeah, so even if I have to take your own Patagonia example, the employees are actually communicating to the marketplace, right? So they may not be communicating about the product, but they're communicating about a movement that Patagonia deeply believes in.
Sure.
Right. So it clearly is having brand impact Okay,
Right. Right.
and company a positive index impact or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
So it's external. It's external. So you're actually showcasing your internal culture to the world and saying, "Wow, this is so amazing." And it then goes beyond talent management, doesn't it?
So when you say employee advocacy or employee branding or whatever, just like a product, at the end of the day, we are influencing the external world, isn't it? It is never internal. The
Mm-hmm.
reason I just laid out the whole process of foundation, then but the whole demonstration of that is it is obviously external. When an employee says he's doing a great work or he's talking about the product, it is obviously external. I mean, we are just discussing. It is the same thing. I mean, I'm saying it
So
is nothing internal about it.
no, no. So then let's kind of deep dive into this, right?
Okay, sure.
So I have got, let's say, a marketing campaign or a brand campaign,
Okay.
and I'm saying, hey guys, this is a brand campaign or this is my latest marketing campaign, and I'd love your support for it. And maybe I do some selection of employees who are good at social media, who are good at communication, who are good at creating stories, and I say, okay, these are the chosen ones, or these are the people who are a brand, and I can create a nice, lovely program around it. So then what you're doing is that you're literally giving it structure. So I would like to know, if you had to build a structure, or if you had to actually talk about something like this in a way that is manageable, or it is so. Do you kind of govern the? I know you're not for scripting, but do you kind of say, okay, this is the campaign, now do something organic about it, or how do you kind of actually brief the employees?
Okay, so for example, in B2B, and by the way, this also relates to the article that I wrote that, how can you use B2B employees itself as a sales tool?
Yeah.
Now, there, the thing is, unlike a B2C where you are showcasing, your employee advocacy through the work that they're doing internally, that is because you work on a consumer brand. But in B2B, it is not like that. In B2B, the work that they do is affecting the clients.
Yes.
So there, the story is slightly different. So there, my advice would be that if employees of, let's say, if I work for a Siemens, which is into this electrical or automation and all that, and in the day of AI, as an employee of Siemens, if I write my, a story around how we are helping clients, getting better ROI or better efficiency or better ROI, that will have more value. So yes, so your question had that nuance. The only thing is probably in a B2B perspective, it works brilliantly, but in a B2C, it might come across as, so that is that nuance that I want to bring out.
I'm sure. No, you get my point. I,
Yeah,
I think that in a B2B thing, so the way in which I see about B2B is like eventually you're still a person. You're
right.
still talking to people outside. You're
Yes,
you're representing a tribe who's talking to another tribe and the so-called leader from that tribe, and you're communicating a story, right?
right.
So
Right.
eventually it is still marketing, right? It is, and
No,
when
but
I
the difference, sorry, Siddharth, the only difference is actually that is I just thought about another brilliant difference. The difference is in consumer products, you consume it. In
Hmm,
B2B, you don't consume it.
right,
You are not consuming a Siemens. I mean, you are. It is part of it. That is what B2B and that is again a fundamental difference between B2B and B2C. B2C,
sure.
mein, for example, you are selling like yesterday. By the way, maybe I can talk about it. I already sent her a comment. The marketing of Lotte, they are launching a Korean pepero. They're launching a Korean, I think, chocolate coated biscuits.
Hmm.
So as it is, there is a Korean craze in India. McDonald's is launching, aloo tikki, Korean burger and all that. So I immediately said this will be a great hit. So then I immediately asked her, is it on Blinkit? And she said it will be available. But the point is, till I consume it inside, I don't know what the taste is, right? Where vis-a-vis a B2B guy writing that, using their software or using their whatever, they reduce their clients, input cost by some 20% is a direct proof already, I mean, so that is a nuance in B2C, B2B also. It is a
Yeah.
personal usage, and till I use it, I don't know. And for me to use it, I need to get influence. And whether I'll get influenced by an employee or a great marketing, that is a matter of debate.
Yeah, but you can think of a gym bro who's working in cult fit or something like that, generally saying, hey, you know what, this works amazingly for me. Look at me and my six pack, or whatever, and this is how it's working for and it could work for you as well. I understand that there's a line and there is something which is like I'm consuming something.
Yeah, so I just wanted to add a nuance here when we're talking about B2B and B2C, right? So I think the way you communicate the prospect or the nuance, that matters a lot. Now in B2B, clearly the proposition is credibility and the trust factor that you have to build with the client, because you are doing client facing work. Now, as in the consumer sector, for example, I'm an employee of the Whole Truth Foods, and I make a reel on Instagram where I'm in the factory and I'm telling the person, like, put 4 almonds, not 3, right? A very small instance. Now it directly signals to the consumer that, okay, they are very obsessive about the kind of stuff that they put in my food, so maybe it is good. Now the point is, for any consumer sector, the nudge to go from, purchasing or just knowing about that product or looking at the shelf and buying it for the first time user experience, for that kind of nudge, do you think that an employee as a brand ambassador could play a pivotal role for the B2C sectors too?
No, it could. Like in your whole truth food, the whole truth food example. I mean, that's a great example. But again, here they are not selling the brand per se. They are selling the process, because the story is already there that they are authentic. So you
Yes.
can use these tools of employees to kind of strengthen the main brand in terms of, you can do that definitely. But then, because of that very nature, I will never go and say buy my this granola health bar. I will never do that, because I know that that is the whole communication itself will take care of it. Authentic, again, the word is authentic.
I
Yeah,
think we're coming to some really interesting place in the conversation.
yeah,
Janvi, thanks for that question. I think
Yes,
what is really happening is that, so I'm understanding this in a very different way now.
right.
If I have to talk in a B2C sort of situation, and if I'm an employee, then I should not be actually following the official script.
Hmm.
Right? I should not be talking about the marketing campaign at all, but
yeah.
I should be talking about a derivative from that marketing campaign, perhaps, which is more authentic and which is more connected to my life. So I can talk about almonds without talking about what the slogan of Whole Truth Foods is.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think you're bang on that. Yes, yes. And that is where, again, first of all, like when we started our whole discussion by this word authentic. See,
Mm.
authenticity has to be also reflected, right? If anything is scripted, people will see through it, man. I mean that is like, it is so obvious. In Twitter they'll pile you or they'll do whatever. Ki kya bol raha hai ye. So first of all, authenticity is the name of the game today. You
Yes.
just can't escape it. You just can't do a PR thing or whatever it is. You have to be authentic. I mean, there might be some, even if there are some slightly negative once in a while, it's okay. I mean, that has to be accepted as as
So,
a
so then let's play a bit of a game, right?
right, right.
What makes a piece of communication from an employee
Mhm.
authentic for the marketplace? So if
Right.
they're talking about a movement, like for example with Patagonia, which Patagonia is very strong at, then it becomes
Sure,
authentic. Like I
sure,
was there in the protest, so here's
sure,
my photo at the protest or whatever, right?
sure.
So it works. Then if I'm literally being part of that process of doing things, and this is how a cricket ball is made, and this and that and the other, so then suddenly you become part of the process. Are
Absolutely.
there any other instances where an employee can actually be authentic and yet contribute to marketing?
Mm. Yeah, so one is okay, again, since we use the example of Swiggy, which I just saw on LinkedIn. Of course, there I saw a lot of people talking about various projects that they are doing. Of course, Swiggy is already a well-known brand today. So if you keep watching these things, they have, let's say, they have done yet another, introduced yet another product category, or yet another this thing. Looking at the consumers. So let us say someone says that there was this great feedback, and people wanted this quick what, I don't know, checkout, or I mean, I'm saying you can talk about various things, or they needed a special category of, like, for example, protein is very popular. So
Yeah.
in my shopping thing, can I directly go to protein instead of having to type protein? Because
Mm.
protein suddenly seems to be the hype in the India, right? Everybody is launching protein. So can we actually go into directly into a protein? I'm just saying. So there was this feedback, and we kind of thought that it required that kind of thing, and we kind of cracked it, and we developed it, and it is doing suddenly wonders.
Mm.
People are happy and whatever. So that kind of story, of course, it's great. I mean, it's like anything which kind of, as you said, yeah, which comes
I
across.
would say maybe internal mechanics, the process of doing things, the genuineness of the product or the service, are all things, and of course, connecting to a very popular movement, which is also supported by the company, seem to be some factors which allow for that nudge to happen in an authentic way,
Right,
perhaps. Yeah.
right, right,
Does,
right.
Janavi,
Yeah.
ask the most tough questions now. We've got 10 minutes.
Okay,
Right.
okay. So I'll ask this one final question from my side.
Yeah.
Looking at the brand side, the other side of the coin, right? Every brand, especially when it comes to the HRs, they want to control the narrative that happens, be it through your employees, be it through your influencers, etc. Even as marketing people, we make sure that the influencers are talking about what we tell them to talk about. Now, when it comes to the authenticity of the tone, how can a company make sure that the tone is preserved while also the standard and the script of the company is preserved without, kowtowing the employee too much?
Um, Honestly, no. But when you say script of company, then it is a script only. No, what is it? I
Like,
mean,
at
when
least
you
the
say
mission.
script of the company, you have to be very clear. When you say script of the company, तो फिर और कुछ है ही नहीं उसमें. I mean, there is nothing else. So it can't be script of the company. Period. It definitely cannot be script. What it can do is broad guidelines.
Yeah.
In terms of you can't say this or that. I don't want. I mean, I've not thought about it, but in terms of obviously, even if let us say genuinely there is some negative thing, you can't talk negative. I mean, utna to, let's say there's a 95% thing and product has slight, this thing, let's say in an iPhone, a temperature mein aisa kuch hang ho jata hai, you can't obviously talk about it. But I think if you just put these slightly, which are not very great, the slight kind of broad guidelines, I think we should just allow employees, and employees also get it. See, that is again, I don't know why I keep going back to that culture thing. The way, the importance of culture is, the more you promote such open culture, even employees will be very open. They will get it. Obviously, they will not speak something negatively. It is like what we tell about bringing up children, right? Like the more you keep telling them ये करो वो उल्टा ही करेंगे. But your job as a parent is to provide a nourishing environment, and building that trust.
I
In
think
fact, in the very act of saying that कि ऐसे मत करो, there will be mistrust,
I
which
say
again gets into the culture part.
it's a very interesting thing. So if you see, and correct me if I'm wrong, most of the interviews that CEOs give on podcasts are very boring because they give very
Right.
diplomatic answers.
Exactly.
Very
Exactly.
diplomatic answers.
Exactly.
So what I do know is that CEOs are not trusted as much as maybe the frontline employees,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So here is one wherein the CEO is given a script, and whatever, and the CEO is talking, and you have employees who are not given that kind of script, but they're authentic. I somewhere think that those guidelines actually are going to help employees be more authentic rather than actually sticking to a script. Will probably work much more than anything else. Always when an interaction happens, right, between Jack and I also, we just come across with something new.
Right.
That comes through in the conversation, that we say, okay, that's my insight from that conversation, right?
Right.
That also allows people also when they're communicating to be open, to have open minds about it. So I'd love to start with you and the insight that you've got from this conversation, and then maybe Janavi can do so, I can do so, whichever way.
Yeah, so the insight I think I got is the interesting thing that you pointed out, Siddharth, is that I never thought about it till you brought this up as to in terms of two things. One is who should own this culture piece, and then the budgeting piece. Of course, I have replied for that, but that bringing out that point, that the fact that CEO should own the culture, and budget, in terms of budget, you can't kind of compartmentalize into different buckets. So I think that was that. I mean, even though I replied to that, but I think that was a very interesting point, which I thought.
Provoker is what I'm saying. Exactly. Okay. Janavi, what about you?
Okay. Yeah. What my insight, what I learned from Prem today, that culture is the root of everything. The more the culture is seated within the company, every communication that happens from the employees, be it to promote your service or be it to promote the culture of the company, that the culture of employee and the company becomes a very integral part of this entire campaign. The more strongly it is rooted with every employee that you hire, the more efficiently it will come out in the campaigns you make them do.
There needs to be a base. There needs to be a base.
Foundation, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no. So what I learned, two things. One is there is clearly a difference in the kind of stories that happen with B2B, because there's an emotional distance. I'm not consuming things and stuff.
Yes.
So that from B2C.
Yes.
So B2B and
Yes.
B2C, there are different types of stories. So that's
Yes.
one. And the second is, I think probably the most important is, I think we need, if we are trying to actually look at employee advocacy, we have to look at guidelines, and guidelines that liberate rather than constrict.
Right. Right.
So
And okay, so there, if I can spend just a minute. Okay, so there is this term called, just like we have MVP, minimum viable product in startup world. So there is a term called EVP, which is employee value proposition.
Yeah.
Now the point is, even though we discussed that culture has to be fundamental and all that, but I think we didn't discuss how does an employee know what that thing is. So that is in the form of something called an employee value proposition, which needs to be communicated to all the internal stakeholders, even when you join or even when people who are there, and which basically talks about the purpose, the mission, the company story, what is a work environment, what are the growth prospects, what is the compensation, what is the benefit. It has a mix of some 7 variables. So every employee needs to kind of absorb this for them to be able to speak, because we talk about culture, but culture ke liye bhi you have to, your kaam karna padta hai. You have to keep communicating that.
Yeah.
You have to live that culture. So uske liye you need to have a craft that EVP. So it becomes it's a Bible. It's like a document.
Lovely. I think this is how we end it. We have to have an employee value proposition, and that value proposition needs to communicate it in the most organic way with a set of guidelines, perhaps.